had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by Sanitarium PB and Pogo Physio. I'm Brad Beer, physiotherapist by trade and training and founder of Pogo Physio. The aim of this show is to educate and inspire you towards the pursuit of your own physical best performance. We do this through interviews featuring some of the world's top physical performers and also some of the world's preeminent experts in their chosen fields. We'll bring you expert editions, coaches corner editions, interest editions, and featured performer editions. And today's episode is all about highlights from 2018. Today you'll enjoy some of the highlights from the 52 guests that were featured across the calendar year that was 2018. What a year it was. 2018 saw the Physical Performance Show regularly sitting inside the iTunes Top 20 for health and fitness, and we surpassed 400,000 downloads of the show since inception. So a huge thank you for your support. So let's jump in to some of the highlights from 2018, starting with the most downloaded guest of 2018, featured performer, Ironman Triathlon champion Lionel Sanders. Here's a little snippet of one of the memorable stories that Lionel shared, where Lionel recounts the end of the 2017 Hawaii Ironman Triathlon World Championships and what he learnt when he crossed the finish line in second place behind 2017 victor Patrick Lange. Lionel, when Patrick did go past you, your mind, you said it was screaming to go, and when your body couldn't respond, what did your mind shift to then? Was it survival?
It definitely was, and had been for probably 10 miles, was move forward. There's like literally there was nothing, there was no mental energy, no nothing other than left foot, right foot, left foot. Literally, I was saying, it's the first time I've ever, I think it was because I was so dead so early into that run. It's the first time I'd ever experienced being so dead that early. And yet I was in the lead. So I mentally I wanted to push myself, but my body was so dead. And I just couldn't fathom. Like at 13 miles, I was having the strong desire to walk. And by 15 miles, I was having troubles turning my legs over. I mean, 11 miles is a long way to go still in the most challenging part of the day, in the most challenging, there's no crowd support, no nothing. And so I just couldn't think about anything other than left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And it's all just a blur from there. It's just that's all that was happening. I went from one point to another. And I really don't come back. I have like a few moments that I remember. I remember the turnaround in the energy lab. I remember seeing Kienle, and I remember thinking, oh, he's not a factor. And then I remember seeing Lang and saying, it's over. Like you're done. He will catch you. And so, yeah, when I saw him, I knew it was over, but I also knew it wasn't over for my day. And I knew the longer I could hold him off, obviously that's going to help my day better. And so, yeah, once he passed me, to be honest with you, I'm thinking about what can I do better next year? What can I do? What did I make mistakes? What did I do? And I wasn't really to be honest, I wasn't worried about getting caught on the back, because I had seen everybody, and I knew that everybody was hurting just as bad as I was. And so, yeah, that's kind of was my mindset. What's interesting, though, what I do remember is when I caught now as you refresh my memory, I remember crossing that finish line, and I hugged Aaron, I hugged my mom and dad, and then Patrick and I hugged. And I remember it's the first time I've ever been at a finish line, a couple times, but this is the most strongest feeling I've ever had. Is like, I know how that guy is wired, because he's wired the same as I am. And I remember him and I remember just like hitting him, like literally we were just hitting each other, like slapping five, hitting each other on the back, like just yelling at each other. And I remember thinking, if he punched me in the face right now, I would be like, again. That's the energy. We both just had this energy that the only way to express it needed to be expressed only between him and I, you know what I mean? And it had to be expressed through physical contact and like just pure energy transfer. And right then and there, I knew that guy's wired just like you, and you should be afraid. And I learned that at that finish line.
Next up on the most downloaded episodes was best-selling author and endurance writer Matt Fitzgerald. And Matt Fitzgerald featured on episode 109, where he discussed with Lewis Craig and myself all things relating to his bestseller, How Bad Do You Want It? Mastering the Psychology of Mind Over Muscle. There was a lot of feedback around this show and a lot of interest. Here's a little snippet of Matt Fitzgerald sharing around the role that a concept known as inhibitory control plays in the pursuit of us pursuing our physical best performance.
Inhibitory control is a psychology term that refers to anytime, and this happens all the time in life, not just in endurance sports, when you have incompatible simultaneous goals, when basically you want two or more things at the same time, but you can't really have them both. The example I always give is, if you want to lose, 5 kilos, but you love German chocolate cake, and there's actually a fresh slice of German chocolate cake sitting in front of you, and you're hungry, and you haven't eaten in several hours, sort of, you want both. I want to lose weight, but I want this cake. Like, what do I do? Inhibitory control is the brain capacity or the mental capacity that allows you to stay focused on typically the thing you truly want more, or the more of the long-term objective. And in endurance racing, where inhibitory control comes into play is that you come into your competition with a goal, right? To get to the finish line as fast as possible, possibly in a certain amount of time, or to, win your age group or whatever it is. So that requires that you suffer. There's no way to, to maximize performance in an endurance race without suffering. But obviously, it's instinctual for all humans to avoid voluntary suffering. And these races are voluntary, right? You sign up, like no one's putting a gun to your head, presumably, and making you do it. So, you get to a point in each competition where you're like, how bad do I want it? It's like, this hurts. And there's a part of you, there's that, devil on your left shoulder saying, come on, let's just cruise it in from here. Like, it doesn't matter that much. It's like you got beer and a burger waiting for you after. But then there's that angel on your right shoulder saying, come on, like, you won't be able to live with yourself. You do want this. You trained for months. And so that's where inhibitory control comes into play, where you have to decide, which do I really like? How bad do I want this? What do I really want the most? How much am I willing to endure to achieve my objective?
Our expert editions in 2018 were many and varied. One of the most downloaded expert editions was centered around all things lower back pain. And to share around the world of lower back pain, I caught up with Professor Stuart McGill, prolific researcher and author, and authority around all things lower back pain. And here's a snippet of Professor McGill sharing around Back Pain 101, what it is, and also some interesting science they were doing looking at the role of people engaging in coitus, well, that's right, sex, experiencing lower back pain. Here's Professor McGill.
Well, at the highest level, back pain is caused by activity that creates stresses in the body. And those stresses can cause pain to the point of disability, so that the person now is unable to do something. Now, that might be the ability to go to work. It might be the ability to be a parent to their child. Or if you followed our recent study, we did the first study ever on coitus or sex. And I'm sure you, as a frontline clinician, have had couples come to you and say, last time we had sex, we knackered our back so badly, we are fearful, we've been celibate for half a year. And there are no clinical guidelines that exist to guide clinicians like yourself. So recognizing that as a clinical deficit, we studied couples in the laboratory. And you can imagine the sensitivity that had to be exercised throughout all of this and the ethical process. But our goal was to create an atlas that we could then give to the clinical community. And if a patient was flexion movement intolerant or extension movement intolerant or compressive load or shearing load intolerant, we would then say, good, now look up on the atlas, and here is a position and movement that doesn't trigger that particular specific pain trigger that we've now measured and documented in your back. And so this was a game changer. So there's just an example of understanding the pathway, the very specific pathway. And I know I get quoted a lot by saying pain has a reason. All this notion that pain is non-specific back pain, that only shows the person has not had a thorough assessment yet. But when they have had a thorough assessment, the pain now is very specific, and you can target. First of all, it's not a matter of doing exercises. It's a matter of taking away the offensive trigger, the thing that is creating the repeated stress. I'll give you an example. If I had a sore thumb, if I kept bending my thumb over and over again, it would only become more sensitive and more sore till the point that I lightly touched my thumb and I would go, of course I display pain behavior. But when we stop stressing the pain mechanism, the thumb settles. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, we can start moving it and having fun with it. So I don't know why this same story and understanding doesn't exist with back pain. I've never heard of non-specific leg pain. Have you? You either have a fractured leg, or you've got torn knee ligaments, or you've got vascular claudication or something. Figure out what's going on with your leg and address a target. This is just what we must do with back. So I don't understand this movement that has led to this notion of back pain being non-specific and in people's heads and all the rest of it.
If you are a lower back pain sufferer, or you know someone in your world who would benefit from Professor McGill's sharings, be sure to share with them episode 108, and from it you'll take a whole lot of understanding about all things lower back pain and rehabilitation. Next up on our 2018 highlights reel is Australian distance running legend Lee Troop, 3 times Olympic marathoner and former 5,000 metre Australian record holder. And during my conversation with Lee shared a very intimate and personal story around his 2000 Sydney Olympic marathon experience, where Lee incurred a nasty strain of his rectus abdominis muscles, which resulted in, for Lee, a disappointing performance. Here's Lee Troop sharing around that moment of his Olympic campaign.
I went into the Sydney Olympics hopeful of winning a medal, and I was fourth at halfway, and there was only a pack of 11 of us, and the first half of the race was amazing. I felt great. I was just really excited about getting into the second half and knowing that it was a fairly hilly second half and using my strength. But as we sort of were running through the city centre, down through town before we went up over the Glebe Island Bridge, I just felt a little bit of a pop in my stomach, and then it just started to get worse and worse. And then, I found out a few weeks after the Olympics that I'd torn my rectus abdominis. But, it was the tale of two stories where I went from feeling like $1 million in the first half to then feeling just like a bucket of doo-doo in the second half. And, I faded back to 66th, and, I was vomiting blood, at some stage, maybe 30 or 34 kilometres. And, it was just sheer torture and agony. I think the sheer torture and agony was just more the fact that I was just embarrassed that it was a home Olympics. It was in front of family and friends, and, obviously my countrymen and women, and, to go into the stadium, like still to this day, I've never seen the race. I don't really remember finishing in the stadium, but I know I was one of the last to finish because there was a cut-off at 2.5 hours. And I got in, and as I walked through the finish line, there was Deke and there was Mona. There was Bruce McAvaney and Rod Tyden. We obviously have some traditions with the Olympics where, all our athletes will wait for the last person to come in. And I just started crying because at that stage I had no idea what was wrong with me, and I sort of navigated my way through the media scrum, and I found a door and I pushed my way out through the door, and it ended up taking me outside the stadium, and then I couldn't get back in, and I didn't have my credentials, or I didn't have anything. And so I started walking back to the village, which was about 2 kilometres away, and I remember getting back to the village and there's no one there. Everyone's at the closing ceremony. Everyone's, in the stadium, and it was just so somber and just like quiet. And I remember getting back to the village, and then the security guard wouldn't let me in because I didn't have my accreditation. I started crying, and anyway, they let me in, and I remember going back to my room, which we stayed way at the back of the village, and I got into my room, and I just, for the next 2 hours, had my head between my legs, just struggling to come to terms with what had happened. And I think that moment for me probably scarred the rest of my running career, because, my next 2 Olympics were all set up with the failure that I felt from the Sydney Olympics. And, I just put way too much pressure on myself. I lost the innocence of what I'd had throughout my youth and through my junior collegiate career. And then during that time, I was training with Mona, where I started to overthink and overanalyze and psychoanalyze. And, I certainly got some great performances out during the rest of my running career, but I certainly don't think I ran with the same purity that I'd had prior to that.
To hear more from Lee Troop, be sure to jump back and download episode 101. You're listening to the 2018 highlights reel edition of the Physical Performance Show. Support for today's show comes from Sanitarium PB. Looking to achieve your personal best? Sanitarium PB can help. This refreshing drink contains 32 grams of protein per serve to help with muscle recovery when included as part of a balanced diet. Sanitarium PB is made with a balanced blend of milk and plant proteins, all your essential amino acids, and contains no artificial sweeteners. Find Sanitarium PB in delicious chocolate or vanilla flavours at your local petrol station. Be your personal best. Recover and refuel with Sanitarium PB. Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of Pogo Physio to get back to their physical best, complete their rehabilitation, and in doing so, cross their physio finish line. In addition to traditional session-to-session appointments, we also offer some award-winning industry-first models of care, including our very popular monthly Wellness Booster packs. Starting from a low $195, you can rehabilitate your injury, including services such as physiotherapy, remedial massage therapy, active rehabilitation, including clinical Pilates, and use of state-of-the-art equipment such as the Alta G anti-gravity treadmill, ensuring that you save money and recover faster. All health fund rebatable. To find out more about Pogo Physio's award-winning services or to schedule your 1-hour initial appointment, be sure to jump over to pogophysio.com.au. While there, also subscribe to our blog where we feature some terrific content to help you get back to your physical best following injury. For now, let's jump back to the 2018 highlights reel edition of the Physical Performance Show. Alongside our featured performer episodes and also our expert editions, our interest editions are always very popular and generate a lot of discussion. And certainly in 2018, one of the episodes that did just that was episode 136, featuring Sweat Elite founder Matt Fox. In 2018, Matt Fox co-released a book with his Sweat Elite partner Tate Hearps called Eliud Kipchoge, History's Fastest Marathoner. And in episode 136, Matt shared around his experiences in observing the very training that Eliud Kipchoge did in the lead up to his marathon world record attempt. And here's a fascinating little snippet of some of the differences that Matt observed between training philosophies of the West and training philosophies that Eliud Kipchoge and his squad exemplified. Here's a great story about being flexible in training and listening to your body when tired.
Yeah, he mentioned to us after one of the long runs that when he feels really tired, he has a day off. It's really that simple. So he doesn't have a structured day off every week, but he does run every day. But probably about once every, I don't remember if he said the specifics, but someone did say to us that he has a day off about once every 3 to 4 weeks, just when he feels tired. And sometimes if he feels tired on a day that's supposed to have a morning run and an evening run, he just won't do the evening run. And it doesn't faze him the slightest. And I think that's a massive difference to a lot of attitudes in the West, where people sort of go, I've got to do 160 kilometers in the week and I can't miss it regardless of how I feel. And that's, in my opinion, looking at not only Kipchoge but also Rhodesia and studying all of these top athletes, that's a really poor attitude in my opinion. In my opinion, it is, just because you're not listening to your body at all there. And that's just asking for an injury, to be honest, in my opinion. Rhodesia was no different. If he felt tired, he would rest or he would change the program. From what I understand, and from my, of course I haven't trained alongside Farah, but I've done a lot of interviewing of people that have, and a lot of study on him, and he is pretty similar. So it's a real thing that they have a day off every now and then. Rhodesia has a day off every week, but he's an 800 meter runner, so he doesn't have to, I guess, do so much volume. But yeah, they definitely do listen to their body a lot more than what I see in the West.
And another very popular interest edition from 2018 featured New York Times best-selling author of Endure, Mind, Body and the Curiously Elastic Limits of Human Performance, Alex Hutchinson. Alex also, just like Matt Fox of Sweat Elite, shared around the time that he spent around world marathon record holder Eliud Kipchoge. This time it was in the lead up to the Breaking 2 Nike record attempt. But here's a great little snippet of an insight that Alex shared around how smiling can help us perform better with endurance sports.
I'll say after the book came out, there was another study from a guy named Noel Brick in Northern Ireland where he looked at he put people on a treadmill and asked them to smile or frown or relax or various things. And when he asked them to smile, their running economy got 2% better. So they were burning 2% less energy to run at a given pace. So there's been a bunch of different studies hinting at the idea that facial expression can be it's kind of a two-way street where sure you smile when you're happy, but sometimes if you smile, that can make you a little happier or put you at ease or make you more relaxed and kind of help your performance. Now, I mean, we should be honest with listeners here and say that this marathon I ran, where I had friends and family positioned around the course with instructions to make me smile, I hit the wall pretty badly in that marathon, and I hobbled to the finish. So there's no miracle cures even with smiles, but my legs were kind of beaten up. From the pounding of the marathon, and there was no smile that was going to overcome that. But I think part of the reason I did that is just as a sort of recognition and a reminder of these more subtle things, call them psychological or whatever the case may be, that influence our perception of effort. In a sense, as I run by a friend with a sign that's supposed to make me smile, the instant of smiling isn't necessarily what's going to make a difference. To me, it's supposed to be a reminder. Don't run, as I often do, with the grimace of effort on my face, because that's going to feed into my perception that I'm working extremely hard and that this is all awfully hard work, as opposed to staying in a relaxed state and just trying to cover ground as easily as possible.
If you missed episode 123 featuring New York Times bestselling author Alex Hutchinson, then be sure to jump back and download the full Interest Edition episode. Now, in addition to featured performer episodes, expert editions, and the Interest editions, our Coach's Corner episodes were very much enjoyed by you, the listeners of the Physical Performance Show, in 2018. And here's a snippet from just one of the coaches we featured in 2018, and that is Dick Telford, Australian medal recipient, Australian distance Olympic team coach, and the very first sports scientist from the Australian Institute of Sport. And here's a snippet of Dick sharing around a concept that he coined of removing the cloud of fatigue from his athletes and the ensuing benefit to their best performances. So here's that little snippet from Dick Telford, Australian medal recipient, episode 119, Coach's Corner edition.
I think I might have first mentioned this cloud fatigue when I was working with Bill Sweetenham and at the Institute of Sport, and later on with Laurie Lawrence and other swim coaches around the place. But with Bill, we worked on a lot with learning how best to taper swimmers. Some swimmers would go into a big event and after training really well for months and not swim anywhere near their best, and until perhaps later on where they had a bit more rest and suddenly found they swum better when it was all over. They'd lost their place in the Australian team, or what it happened to be. So we learnt by trial and error a little bit. And all I mean by this one of the things I used to talk about with swim coaches originally when I was the physiologist there with the swim team, and with Pac Lahisi and the likes of Rob De Castello and all those others that were great runners at the Institute of Sport. Then it was a case of your fitness you build up gradually week by week by week by week, and you're building up the fitness, but at the same time you're building up this fitness. You often got this little cloud of fatigue that's hovering around there. You can get rid of it sometimes and get good sessions out, and it comes back again. But you're always, particularly for the long distance runners, running a little bit tired. And a lot of the times, the marathoners who are running 200K plus a week, they've got that cloud of fatigue over them. So when the time comes to taper over the last 2 to 3 weeks before a marathon, you can continue on doing some good sessions, but you can remove a lot of the volume around that, not all of it, but a lot of the volume around that, and the type of sessions to remove the cloud of fatigue and let the fitness, which has been improving all the way through and hasn't changed much, but the performance is a thing that changes dramatically when the cloud of fatigue is removed on top of that fitness, if you like, and the performance comes through. And as a coach and as a physiologist, I thought one of the most important things that I had to contribute towards the athletes I was working with was learning how to get the best performance out of an athlete at the right time. And that's critical, of course, for championship events.
To enjoy more Coach's Corner editions, be sure to jump back and peruse the archives of the 2018 episodes of the Physical Performance Show. And finally, as you hear me share each week, the aim of this show is to educate and inspire you towards the pursuit of your own physical best performance. And certainly in 2018, we were inspired by so many of the featured guests. To close out this highlights reel episode of the Physical Performance Show, here's some of the more memorable, inspiring stories from some of our featured guests, starting with episode 130, featured performer, Ironman Triathlon world record holder, 3 times Olympian, 4 times world champion, Tim Don, sharing around his remarkable and inspiring comeback from a C2 hangman's neck fracture incurred just one day before the 2017 Hawaii Ironman World Triathlon Championships when he was hit by a truck on the Queen K Highway. Here's Tim sharing around the moment that he was informed of the severity of his injury and the fact that he would not be racing the 2017 Hawaii Ironman Triathlon World Championships. Here's Tim Don.
No, unfortunately, Kelly, she was back in Boulder because it was my daughter's birthday the next day, and she's at school. I was with Franco, my manager, my coach Julie, and my very good friend Pat, who flew back with me. He went out to Kona to watch the race, but he flew back with me instead. I was in a state of shock because I think everyone around me realised that this was bloody serious. Well, until I heard that, I thought, well, I haven't broke because I x-rayed my collarbone because my shoulder was very swollen. And I was like, well, I think I've only got whiplash and my shoulder's not, I haven't broken my collarbone. So there's a chance I could race. When I think back, I'm like, these guys are looking at me going, are you mad? So I think for me, it was total, I guess, disbelief. I didn't appreciate how bad it was. And then the nurse left, and then I started crying, and then I really started crying, and everyone's going nuts because as you start crying, my whole body was shaking. And they're like, you got to calm down, because they didn't want me to dislodge anything else in my neck. And that's when they gave me the morphine, because up until then I didn't want to take it just in case I could race. And I think there's so many emotions. I mean, I felt I was saying sorry a lot because I felt like I'd let everyone down, or my sponsors or my coaches, everyone that had been on the journey. And, it was just tough. I mean, I can't put it into words. And I hope no one else, if I'd have messed my race up through bad nutrition, through cramping, through a penalty, through a puncture, at least I gave it a go. But to not be able to get on the start line, it's like studying for an exam and not failing, but you get to the door and they say, sorry, you can't sit this exam. And you're like, well, hold on, I've just studied 10 years for this. This was Ironman's tough as it is. You don't get to line up a good season and peak at the right time and be in that state. So, it was a tough pill to swallow. It really was.
Now, from Tim's remarkable comeback from a severe injury through to another remarkable comeback featured in 2018 on the Physical Performance Show, and that's of Australian Olympic swimmer Dan Smith. On episode 137, featured performer Dan Smith shared around the lofty highs of his promising record-setting junior swimming days to the lowest of lows with drug addiction, including ice, cocaine, and time in drug rehabilitation. And here's Dan sharing around how important it is to surround ourselves with like-minded people and the perils of not doing that.
I actually got expelled from school in grade 10, and that's when I started to, I was working with older people. I was working with people that are 10, 15 years older than me, so I was able to, get exposed to things that I probably shouldn't have. And then all my older friends when I was younger were then into different stuff then. So when my girlfriend and I broke up, I was pretty hurt by, some poor choices that I'd made. And, I started getting into the partying scene, and that's when I started to get introduced to ecstasy tablets. And what happened was I seen one of my friends that was younger, that was an older guy, and he had a Monaro. And I said to my best friend, how did you get that? And he goes, he sells drugs. And I was like, sign me up. So there I go, go and get my first, amount of drugs. And I started to try and deal drugs. And, I was really just a lost boy. And at the time too, I won my first Open Australian title. So I was number one in Australia at 18. And that's when my life started to, spiral out of control. I was also DJing a bit, and I was DJing school after parties. And, for me, sounds pretty bad too, but I also really liked drink driving. I was a very disobedient kid, and that's what I was up to. I used to drink drive on the weekends and train during the week, and I was also selling drugs at the same time.
Were you excited about your Australian title?
No, I wasn't. I was actually I at the time was embarrassed to win because I didn't want to win, because I didn't want to get interviewed at the time, and that's honestly was my reason. I never fully achieved my potential of how good I actually was at that time. And, all I wanted to do was party and, escape really the way that I was feeling. And, before I knew it, I was DJing a formal after party. This is about 4 weeks after the Australian title, and I was on a break because I had a bit of a shoulder problem at the time, and physios weren't as good back then as what they are now. And, I had to take a bit of time out of the water. And for me, this one night, I was DJing a school after party up at, on the Gold Coast here, and the long story short, the party got cut off, and I've came out to my car, and I was very intoxicated at the time, and I've two of my best mates were passed out and vomit in my car, and I've put seatbelts on them, cleaned up all my vomit, and packed up all my DJ gear, and I've decided I'd get behind the wheel of the car, and I've driven home. That I've gone to drive out of the onto Ferry Road, the main street of the Gold Coast, and as I'm driving out, it was about 3 a.m, and the cops have put their sirens on because the cops knew that I was driving out of the party, and I gassed it. I didn't want to get caught, and I ended up getting in a high-speed police chase, and the police clocked me at 198 kilometres an hour in a 60 zone, and I was doing that down the main street of the Gold Coast, and the police, I was driving so out of control, the police had to call the chase off. And as I've come down to this intersection on the Gold Coast, this car's ran a red light, and I've had to hit the brakes. And what happened was, because I was going so quick, the car kept going straight, flipped front to end 3 times, and went through a brick wall and into a house. And so we all, I'm very thankful that we all miraculously survived. I ended up kicking my door open and ran from the scene and went on the run from the cops. And what happened was I ended up getting caught down the road, and that's when I got locked up, and I got put in lockup, and I spent 3 days in there, and when I came out, all the news crews were waiting for me out the front, and they absolutely humiliated me and embarrassed me. And I never knew how to deal with any of those feelings, so I decided it'd be a good reason to, run away from the pool and run away from all my friends at the time, and that's what I did. I started, all my schoolmates were into marijuana and stuff, and that's what I started to do. I started to sell drugs and smoke marijuana, and, that's how I really escape the way that I was feeling at the time. I think for me, I ran away. I didn't talk to anyone, and I was that embarrassed. I didn't want to show my face at the pool anymore, and I blocked Dennis out as well, and that's how I just coped with it all. And I literally just ran away from it, which wasn't the right thing to do looking back on it now. And that's when my life really started to spiral out of control.
The very popular and very well downloaded episode featuring Australian Olympic swimmer Dan Smith. And finally, one of the themes that tends to emerge from the featured performers is that around the importance of persistence. And I can't think of a better way than to round out this highlights reel from 2018 than one of the share-ins from Ironman triathlon great, 6 times Hawaii Ironman World Triathlon Champion Mark Allen. In episode 139, Mark Allen sharing around growing through the struggle. And let's not forget, yes, Mark is so well lauded for his 6 Hawaii Ironman victories. However, preceding that were 6 outings on the big island of Hawaii that didn't see Mark walk away with victory at all. So Mark is very well versed to speak about the struggle. And here's a little snippet of his share-ins.
Set your goal and be patient. Come up with something that's exciting for you to pursue, but then be patient in fulfilling that dream, fulfilling that goal, and never ever shortchange yourself with what that dream might be. You don't have to tell people what that amazing dream might be, but you, if it has importance to you, then pursue it, go for it. And if for some reason you don't make it, you will have had such a great journey because it had importance for you to try. Those great journeys are the ones that take on a life of their own, that turn your life into something that you never could have imagined. Triathlon was that for me. It was one of those journeys for me. I wanted to just do Ironman one time, and then I was going to get a career, figure out what I was going to do with my life. But it was just this thing that kind of had this spark inside of me that I didn't have to set the alarm to get up to train because I was excited to get up and train. And through that, then it turned into something that here we are in 2018 and, almost, 30 years, 40 years past when I started.
So there you have it, 10 highlights from the 52 episodes of the Physical Performance Show in 2018. Now, please jump over to social at Physical Performance Show on Instagram or at Brad_beer over on Instagram for myself or likewise on Twitter, and let me know which episode in 2018 stood out the most to you. Was there a story? Was there a sharing, perhaps from one of the experts, that really landed for you? I'd love to know. Don't forget, the Podsies, they are a terrific way to share the episode that you're enjoying while you're out and about pursuing your physical best. Keep them coming and be sure to tag the show and myself in at Physica Performance Show and at Brad_Beer once again. This show would not be possible without the support of the show sponsors. Thank you to this episode's sponsor, Sanitarium PB, for your support. Big thanks also, as always, to the three good folk who make this show possible. Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, Susan Wilkin on all things show administration, and Matthew Walding on all things graphic design. Thank you for leaving ratings and reviews over on iTunes. They are terrific. They are fuel to keep bringing this show to you each and every week. And a special massive thanks to you for hitting subscribe from whichever podcast player you enjoy the Physica Performance Show from. In 2019, we are looking to grow the show to get into more earbuds of people just like you who are looking to pursue and perform at their physical best. And the very best way, the single best way to help and ensure that happens is to hit subscribe. So if you've been enjoying the episodes and are yet to hit subscribe, please do it. Do it now. Now, next week on the Physica Performance Show, I bring you a conversation that I recently had with a very special Australian, and that is Dr. Dan Pronk. Dr. Pronk served within the Special Operations Command, or the SAS for Australia, as a medical doctor. That's the elite of Australians' military forces. Dr. Dan was dispatched, Dr. Pronk was dispatched and served in 5 operations, 4 of which were in Afghanistan. And recently, Dr. Pronk released a book titled Average 70 Kilo D-Head, Motivational Lessons from an Ex-Army Special Forces Doctor. And in next week's conversation, we delve into the world of the psychology of high performance in high stakes environments. And Dan distills just a few of those 17 motivational lessons that he can reflect on from serving the nation of Australia at the highest level in combat. So it's a different sort of show for the Physica Performance Show. However, I know you're really going to enjoy it. So be sure to be tuning in next week to episode 146. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physica Performance Show.